The Michael Berry Show.
Jonathan Saenz is the president of Texas Values, and he joins us now. A law going into effect yesterday related to the Ten Commandments in schools. What I want to do is go very slow so we explain that everyone understands what is required versus what is allowed, who the exemptions are, and more. Jonathan Saenz, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Michael.
So the law that passed relates to. I heard your interview. I rarely get to listen to our morning news, but I did this morning. Was able to this morning, and I thought it was fantastic, and I learned a lot. But I still had some questions, and I'd like to start over as if no one heard that interview, and go through that because I noticed there were about 1,200 school districts, and it only applies to 11. Let's start with what the law says.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you're right. There might have been a few people that were not awake at 6:20 in the morning, but some of us were. There's a new state law in the state of Texas that went into effect yesterday, September 1st. Now, it's very common that new state laws go into effect on September 1st during a legislative year, which is an odd number year like this year, 2025. And so that's the significance of that date. So it's not anything particular about this law. Just about every state law goes into effect September 1st. Unless it has over a 2/3 vote. Now, this bill did pass with bipartisan support. We did have some Democrats, along with Republicans, that supported this law. The bill number is Senate Bill 10. And if people have more information, 10commandmentstexas.com is the website we have set up with a lot of good information. But it's real simple. Every classroom in the state of Texas, public school classroom, K through 12, is required to display the Ten Commandments. Now, it's not any version, it's not any wording. The law itself has specific wording for the Ten Commandments. And the significance of that, Michael, is this is the language of the Ten Commandments monument that's on the Texas Capitol grounds on the northwest side, just outside of the Texas Capitol in Austin, in our capital city. And that's significant because that language on that Ten Commandments monument was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court by a 5-4 vote. As a matter of fact, that case was argued at the U.S. Supreme Court by Governor Greg Abbott, who at the time was our Attorney General of the state of Texas. Now, the size of it, it's required to be at least 16 inches by 20 inches, and it is required to be displayed in a conspicuous place, right? In other words, they can't cover it up. They can't hide it in a corner so no one can see it. The goal is for it to be displayed so it's visible. Now, the law does not require kids to read it. It doesn't require kids to acknowledge it. You don't have to walk into the classroom and check mark that you noticed it that day. But it is required for it to be displayed. And it's in every public school classroom. It's not, in the gym somewhere or one place. It's in every classroom. Michael, we think that could be close to 300,000 classrooms throughout the state of Texas, 1,200 school districts. There are a lot of school campuses. And so that's what the law requires. And it's about the historical relevance and the connection of the Ten Commandments from the Old Testament, of the Bible, and very common when you think about references to law and government and culture in American history. That's long been the case. As a matter of fact, the U.S. Supreme Court has a depiction of the Ten Commandments on its Capitol, on its building. And so we believe if it's good enough for the Supreme Court, it should be good enough for the classroom.
Well, it's an interesting question, the separation of church and state, to the extent that this is a religious issue. And, you think of Jefferson's letter to the Baptists at Danbury and the separation of church and state. And this is something most people do not understand, was a separation because the Anglican Church had been the King's Church when they wouldn't honor his divorce. And so he simply made himself the head of the church. The idea was to keep the state out of the church and never the church out of the state. And our founders were clear about that, including Jefferson's letter, but including all of the religious references on documents, on currency, on buildings, as you noted, much later, of course, the Supreme Court building and the Ten Commandments. But it's important to understand the point was to keep the state out of the church, not the church out of the state.
Well, that's right. And look, here's also something that's important. When you have a document that has historical relevance, and the Supreme Court has said that in the case of Van Orden versus Perry, which was the case that went up to the U.S. Supreme Court that related to the Ten Commandments monument on our Texas Capitol grounds that was upheld at the U.S. Supreme Court in 2005. The court was very clear about this, and they've said it numerous times that when you have a document that's historically relevant, even if it has some connection to religion, the government can't tear it down. They can't attack it. They can't use that as their reason for not allowing it because it's religious in nature. And it can't be sort of a heckler's veto either, right? You can't have people coming in saying, oh, but that document and that display and symbol has something for religious because of that reason, we want the government to take it down, and we want to force the government to take it down. The U.S. Supreme Court said that is hostility to religion. To your point, that's not what Thomas Jefferson envisioned. That's not what the founders envisioned. But for decades, Michael, that's what the ACLU has gotten away with in other groups, right? And there's no coincidence that New York lawyers from the ACLU have been the ones that have filed the lawsuit against the Texas Ten Commandments law. But there's established precedent here, and there's no doubt that there's a historical connection and relevance. I mean, you asked David Barton, numerous scholars, people that testified in the court hearing in San Antonio on this bill that I was at a couple of weeks ago made it clear there is a historical connection. Just because there's also something religious in nature is not a valid reason for the courts to try to take that down or to not allow this to be displayed in public school classrooms when it's historically relevant. And the fact that some people don't realize that is even more reason why it should be displayed so people are aware of this history.
That's absolutely true. Jonathan Saenz with Texas Values. It's important to understand that the freedom of expression of religion and that freedom from the parishioner, from the Christian, is as important as a perceived, but I don't recognize, freedom to avoid being offended. We're not requiring anyone to worship. We're not requiring anyone to bend the knee. We're not requiring anyone to bow to idolatry or wear religious symbols. What is being asked is to stop the expression of it. It's also important, and you made this point, I think, this morning, that you cannot take Christian teachings out of world literature, out of thought, out of politics. So many of the first places we see those concepts offered were offered in the Bible. And so you cannot simply rip those out because you're Jewish, Muslim, some other group, agnostic, atheist, and you don't like Christian, Satanist. And then finally, we've got the pure power play. You've got, I think, a lot of people who are non-Christian of other organized religions who simply want to say you can't. Well, no, that's not going to be tolerated. Stay tuned. Jonathan Saenz, Texas Values. Jonathan Saenz is the president of Texas Values, one of 830 laws that went into effect this legislative session. Biennial legislative session, as we've mentioned, that's every 2 years our legislature meets, currently in a special session. The second governor has called at the end of the session. One of the laws that passed related to the Ten Commandments in the classroom. Let's leave the exempted schools out for a moment, Jonathan. Reading at tencommandments.com, it says every public school classroom will be required to display a Ten Commandments poster or framed copy, and each school district must accept conforming posters or framed copies that are privately donated. So it is required that they post these, but there are individuals. I know there's a woman, the good therapist. Is it what it was? I can't remember the name of it. There are different groups I know in the Houston area, that are donating these. Jonathan, you may know of others, but they are required to post the Ten Commandments. I was not aware of that. I thought they were allowed to, but speak to that if you would.
Well, that's absolutely right. And we're one of the organizations that have been doing some donating as well. We donated 6,000 posters to Conroe ISD. And I want to make sure everyone's clear, other than the 11 school districts, which in your listening audience, I'm not sure how far the reach is, but greater Houston area, it's Houston ISD and Cy-Fair, and then like Travis and the Austin area, North Side and San Antonio, Austin ISD, and a few others. So the other 1,189 school districts in the state of Texas are required to follow this law. Now, the law does not require the school districts to purchase the posters. Now they're only $1 each, and we've got a great website set up. We've got a vendor that a lot of great groups like David Barton and others are using, Rick Green. Our website is 10commandmentstexas.com, and when you go to that website, you can pick a certain school district. You can purchase the 10 Commandments posters for $1 each, and it helps us figure out who's helping where. But the idea is to have them donated to the school. Now, school districts could choose on their own to purchase them. We just didn't want the law situated in a way that required them to purchase to use tax dollars. And for whatever arguments people might make about that, this just makes it easier. And there are a lot of people that want to do that. There are thousands of them that have already been purchased throughout the state. This is an effort that's been going on for several months. A lot of school districts have already purchased or had their posters donated. They're getting ready to put them up. But that's how the law works, and that's how it's designed to work, is have people donate them, bring them to the school district, the superintendent, the administration building, and if they're conforming to the law, which the website we have makes it real easy. If you order from the same vendor that we're using, a lot of people are, that's what you get, $1 each. So 10commandmentstexas.com is the website, and a lot of people are excited about it because they recognize the value of having the 10 Commandments displayed. Again, students are required to read it. They're not required to believe it. They're not even required to acknowledge that they saw it in the classroom. But, Michael, it's not all that different than what we have in curriculum. As part of our curriculum, students are required to learn about the connection of the 10 Commandments to America's law and founding and our government and culture. The Supreme Court has said that that's permissible. And as you acknowledge, right, that whether people believe one religion or another, this is primarily about the historical connection. Whether and there are people of whether they're that are not Jewish or not Christian, that are from different other faiths, that recognize the significance of the 10 Commandments and the impact it's had on a lot of law and policy in government. So it should be no different here in Texas.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. I go back to the Roy Moore case that launched Roy Moore to national fame and notoriety. This is an issue that doesn't go away. The core religious values of the founders of this country are still the core religious values of a majority of believers, and these are beyond the Christian faith. These are good rules to live by. Jonathan Sines, Texas Values. Thank you, my man. Oh, Jonathan. Oh, wait, before
God
you go,
bless you. Appreciate it.
Hold on. I forgot to ask you. The schools that are exempted from this, what is that about?
Yeah. Well, and it's not. I'm not picking on you for using the word exempt. That's probably accurate. But the relevance is there was a group of families that I assume were recruited or got connections with the ACLU, and they had their New York lawyers come in and argue against the Texas 10 Commandments law. They filed a lawsuit against specific school districts. It doesn't have anything to do with those school districts not liking it. Maybe some of them don't, but the school districts did not sue to stop the law being enforced or going into effect. Some families did, some parents and so on that didn't like it, and the ACLU doesn't like it as well. And so there was a court ruling about 2.5 weeks ago by a judge in San Antonio who said, for now, until I see more evidence and this trial moves along, I'm going to say that in those particular school districts that the 10 Commandments law is not to go into effect. But this happens all the time. If you're not a party to that lawsuit, the rest of the state has to follow this law. As of yesterday, the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton put out a letter making that clear that all these other school districts are required to follow this law. And it's not to your point, it's not maybe we think so. The law says you have to display the poster of the 10 Commandments. Now, that's assuming that it's been donated or one's been provided for them to hang up. And so that's why we're doing a lot of work to get the word out. But I want to mention another thing, too. We've got an event coming up at the end of September where David Barton, who knows this issue well, is going to be talking about it, giving people more insight. But in the meantime, if you're getting, mixed signals from your school district or they're telling you something different, whatever the case is, reach out to our organization. Our friends at First Liberty Institute with Kelly Shackelford are doing the same thing. We're here to walk you through it and give you that protection and for you to say, hey, tell your school district, the law requires this if you're not one of those 11. But again, the website, 10commandmentstexas.com, we've got a lot of great information.
I feel the need to say this, having been through a few of these over the years. I think marching up to the school where you don't have children and screaming, you have to have the 10 Commandments on the wall, is going to be a lot less productive short-term and long-term for our cause than saying, hey, can I help you fund these, or can I go out and raise the money to fund them? As you said, it's $1 a piece. It's not that much, one per classroom. But for those people who are going to be screaming and hollering that the school district has betrayed us, the law doesn't require them to do that. Well, I guess it does require them to do it, but it gives them the option of private donation. Why wouldn't we do that? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't we make it easy to comply? Jonathan Sines, Texas Values, thank you very much, my man.
God bless you. We'll see you.